Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. Today's guest is Australian board builder Eden Saul, also known as Dead Kooks. Eden's boards are written by everyone from Dave Rostovich to John Roseman at Cloudbreak to Victoria Vergara, even by Hollywood actress Margot Robbie, as I learned in this chat. He also built a couple of yin yang twins for Coco and Mason Ho for electric acid surfboard test in 2001, which is the board I actually eventually ordered. I'll showcase that here in a minute. I got it about 2 years ago when he was in California shaping at Catalyst, formerly Basham's, in San Clemente. And then after he shaped that, we took it down to Moonlight Glassing in San Diego and had it laminated by Nainoa Spire and Superwolf. It really became one of my favorite boards in the last couple of years. It would be a great option for a one board quiver. You could ride it in small waves, bigger waves like overhead, but it really thrives in point breaks. Anyway, Eden's boards have been in high demand worldwide for years, and he's attempted to fulfill that demand by traveling and doing residencies in Japan, Europe, Hawaii, California. But of course, that takes a ton of time away from home and your board orders that are waiting for you at home. So it's really just a short-term solution for immediate orders. It's really not a sustainable way to live, nor a way to actually scale a business. And as we've seen in surfing, there are a few different ways to scale a surfboard business, most of which almost guarantee sacrificing some level of quality and also the original intent of the shaper just as production grows. Materials often change in different regions, manufacturing methods have to change, and of course, you begin to rely on employees who are sometimes an ocean away. So Eden is here today to discuss that very first scary step of growth beyond your own physical limits and output, the challenge of delegation, and how to transition some of your time from simply creating to administration and planning. As always, you know that our show is brought to you by RealWaterSports, VAER Watches, and the Surfrider Foundation. RealWaterSports is actually in the midst of a used gear sale right now. And it's not just used gear, actually. There's some gear with just slight manufacturing blemishes that you can save up to 40% on. Pretty incredible. From surfboards to foil gear to kite gear and more. Check it all out at realwatersports.com. VAER watches. Look, man, I love VAER. They have kept me stylish and on time since 2019. They just opened their first retail store in Venice Beach, California. So if you're anywhere nearby, please go check that out and you can try on the watches in person. These are built for the ocean, but they're classic designs and they're assembled in America. Mine is actually solar powered and we'll save you 15% by going through our portal, which is vaerwatches.com/surfsplendor. And importantly, the Surfrider Foundation has endeavored for 41 years to keep our oceans healthy and clean. They are fighting plastic pollutions, offshore drilling, beach access issues, detrimental coastal developments, and much more. Please consider following their work and also consider becoming a member at surfrider.org. Thank you for that. Okay, without further ado, as you know, my name is David Scales for Surf Splendor, and I really hope that you enjoy my conversation with board builder Eden Saul. Surf Splendor. Did you see Bells is off, by the way?
I just did.
Okay.
We've got, I'm sure like most people have like a fantasy surfer group chat that's firing up right now. I literally just sent a message off throwing some shade because my mate's like, why does my surfline say it's 6 foot and it looks flat? And I was just going, because Americans have to talk everything up and say that it's bigger than it actually is. The Australian surfline says it's 2 to 3 and it looks fun. So,
okay. I was going to say, do you guys is Surfline the main forecasting site that you use?
I guess I'm still kind of old school. I still just look at the synoptic charts.
Okay.
Especially where I'm at here on the East Coast of Oz, it's pretty simple. You can just look at like the synoptic charts. They're coming up out of the Antarctic through the Tasman and you can pretty much see what's going on. California always tripped me out where you've got the shape of like LA Bay or Channel Islands and Catalina and all this other junk. And it's like, oh, it's a 186. So it's going to be here. And then like, or you'd be up in Rincon and it's like, you might as well be in a snow resort where it's like, it only breaks half the year and the rest of the year is just flat. Like here we just have, it's either east swell off like a tropic low or it's south. And that's and then there's waves everywhere, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, in Southern California, even like just between Orange County and LA, there's a bunch of curvature in the coast. So you think California's facing west, but it's not. Like a lot of that Southern California coastline's facing south.
Yeah.
So it's a little deceiving.
Yeah, like we've got that like specifically where I am. Like if you look at the shape of like Byron Bay, the way the coast is, or like Snapper Rocks is sort of the same. But like realistically, if we got swell, we've got swell everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so who's on your fantasy team then?
I got a couple of little secret ones. I'm not letting it all out.
You can't say?
No, I'm excited to see Dane Henry. He's been surfing incredibly well. I think Jack Robbo's going to have a pretty stellar year. I know he's sort of changed boards, and I know just for a few little inside industry bits there going on. Connor O'Leary's seeing Connor surfing at home a bunch lately. He's looking really, really good. He's got a new sponsor with some local, like a local brand out of Byron Bay of Fens, and another friend of mine's like a hydration company. They're sort of getting behind him. Yeah, there's some young faces coming through, which I think it looks cool.
I mean, there was the top 10 Challenger Series finishers, 5 of them were Australians, so
Yeah,
that's got to be exciting. And I think all regular foots too, right?
I'm not sure. I haven't.
Is
I couldn't tell you on that one, but
is
maybe that's correct. Yeah.
is Oscar Berry regular foot?
I actually don't know.
He's the one that I haven't seen surf a ton, but I know all the others are
He's
regular
the one
foot.
I'm probably the least familiar with too.
Yeah. So among that crew, are there any that you have any special insights to, or that you're particularly excited about?
I'm like, it's just interesting. Like Callum Robson's back on tour. Um, it's just kind of cool. I think there's a lot of these guys are really grindy. You know, you've got some of these boys are like working lifeguarding and stuff on the Gold Coast over summer, and like working swinging a hammer and doing surf coaching. Trying to rake a little cash together before they go and
Yeah.
have another run at this thing. So I think that's kind of cool. Seeing him
I
like
don't
really have to grind it out.
I don't know if you saw Kyle Abelli's commentary. Stab Magazine interviewed him about like, when do you know to throw in the towel when you're chasing your QS campaign?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said in response was, he goes, when you're on the CT level, he's like, you almost, because of the structure of the tour, you go to these places for 2 weeks, you only surf for 3 days. Even those 3 days, you're only surfing a limited amount of time. He's like, ultimately, your talent level atrophies at that level because you're not able to chase swell and surf the best waves in the world, like you had
Yeah,
been
that checks out.
previously. Yeah, and he goes and then on the flip side with the QS where they're constantly going, he's like, you see those guys making monumental progress year over year. And he said Caleb Robson's the great example of this because, he couldn't put it together necessarily on tour. He had a couple of good heats, of course, and
Yeah.
10-point rides and stuff, but over the course of the season couldn't necessarily connect the dots. And he goes back to the CS and all of a sudden he's surfing better on the CS. Like in the last event, I think it was the Newcastle event, I saw him do a crazy air. It's like, I don't remember seeing him ever do
You usually
airs.
see him doing that.
No, he was like power surfer, and now
Yep.
he's like mixing it up with newfangled tricks. So I thought that was kind of interesting from Kaio. And I don't
Yeah.
know if it's just anecdotal or if it all, if that actually,
Well, he's been around the
if
scene
stab,
long enough. I'd listen to what he's got to say. You
and he's
know.
done it. He's done every level of it.
Yeah.
So, but Dane Henry, you mentioned, I'm blown away. Every time I see a Dane Henry clip, I'm blown away. But I'm so apprehensive to get too excited because that's how I felt about Ethan Ewing when he first got on tour before he got bumped off. That's how I felt about Morgan Siblick before Morgan Siblick got bumped off. Like we
Morgan's
see
been
it.
like lifeguarding on the Gold Coast. Like
I know.
it's
And
pretty
his
killer.
surfing's so gnarly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I know it
it's
takes a
just,
few years for these guys to put it together, and I think there'll be some interesting ones. I think the way the draw will stack up with sort of like Gabby coming back in as a lower seed, or like on the women's side, will probably be even gnarlier, where you got like Steph and Carissa as low seeds coming in.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
especially at a wave like Bell's, like that's kind of going to be pretty interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. While I was hoping that the event would be put on hold so it didn't interrupt our recording, I'm kind of
We could have
I'm
had it
glad.
on in the background, done some live
Yeah,
commentary.
exactly.
Would have been
Well,
interesting for everyone except.
I've done that plenty of times in the past, have it on my phone down below, but I do find I'm a little distracted, so it's probably good
Yeah,
that it didn't run.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, well, good to catch up again. How's things been?
Great, great. I was gonna ask you though, you talked about your friends supporting Connor O'Leary.
Yep.
Um, what's your policy with team riders? I notice you do publish clips of like Victoria or Dave Rostovich, but do you actually
Yeah.
have a roster of riders?
No, not really.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm happy to sort of make sure those guys are kind of as looked after as much as they want to be. Um, Dave rides a lot of Gary McNeil boards. I know he's been riding boards from Neil Purchase and sort of a bunch of other sort of local shapers around here. Dave will sort of just jump on whatever he's feeling at the time. And Victoria, yeah, sort of we've been working on stuff together for over 10 years. But, try to make sure she's looked after. She's got a few new projects she's working on. I won't say too much on that, but she's got some cool stuff happening at the moment. So yeah, it's fun. And then otherwise, I sort of, a lot of these guys are just longtime friends and sort of we all just surf together and I'm, get them boards when they're psyched on something. I'll get a phone call or a text and, it all happens pretty organically. But yeah, I keep it pretty loose. I'm just like, if you want to ride some boards, if you want some boards, we'll get something figured out. And then, I don't get too butthurt if someone wants to go jump on something else or like get back on their shortboards or whatever else.
Do you see would there be any value in locking somebody up in kind of a one-on-one partnership?
I think there definitely is, like you've got to look at, the relationship that like, I don't know, probably the best one I think in modern times is like seeing what Simon Jones and Torrin have been able to do. Um, you know, both of those guys are good friends and people I see about a bunch. Torrin not as much now; he's moved to Tassie, but yeah, like what they've built's amazing. I don't know. I just haven't really clicked with someone that's made sense, I guess, to make that happen.
Yeah, gotcha. Um, totally off, uh, not related to anything that we've discussed until
Okay.
now, but how did you get Jeremy Allen White in a Dead Kook shirt? Oh, and please tell me it was not a photo shop.
I've got no idea. These things happen. I'm sure there's some random shit you could find of like, Margot Robie riding our boards and all kinds of funny things that have happened over the years.
So, have you seen Margot Robbie riding your boards?
Yeah, yeah. Margot's got a couple of our boards, definitely.
I've seen that clip or image or
There's
two of her.
photos, there's like stuff of like a Vogue or like a AD thing at home. There's like boards in the lounge room and there's some clips of her like surfing, yeah, down on holidays and stuff. I don't know. Things just happen.
I never noticed that it was a
Yeah.
Dead Kook board that she was on.
Yeah. There's some random stuff. It's kind of funny, even like, I don't know. I made some shirts that I don't think we ever even actually made. I just had like some handful of like sample ones that like, I gave to like a band that was touring and then all of a sudden they're like, their song's number one in the world and they're like wearing the shirt, wearing like the drummer's wearing it. And people are like, oh, where's that? I'm like, I didn't even make that shirt. We just like made a handful and
That's funny. The Paris Hilton in the Dead Kook shirt,
that's
that
clearly
look
a Photoshop
that
for
looks
hell.
okay, I was gonna say
Oh,
that one looks Photoshop, but then the Jeremy Allen White one, I'm like, you know what? Maybe Photoshop just got better, and so now you
yeah,
can.
then the Paris Hilton one was hilarious. And people like going, is that for real? I'm like, come on, man.
Well, is there any way to track, like, does that bump up merch sales for you in any way? Do you sell more surfboards that week?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah.
It's
You're
like
not track
I'm such a small operation. Like it's, at the moment it's just me in there and my sister coming in to help out a couple of days a week with some admin stuff and that's it. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think part of the reason that maybe we see celebrities or other people wearing your stuff more than just another random brand is I think you've done a killer job with the branding. Something about the name, even Dead Kooks, I don't know why, it just seems cool. And then the logo designs and the different graphic design work, color schemes, all that sort of stuff, just it's really, I don't know, it's cool.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I could see it translating with like a broad market like that who maybe doesn't know anything about surfboards and design, but it still just feels, authentic.
Yeah, I think I don't know, there's a bit of crossover with random, I don't know, like this, like Metalwood. It's a friend of ours, Cole, who does like a golf brand, and he's got, just the amount of girls you just see wearing his like camo hat and stuff. And I'm sure they've got no idea that's even golf related or what any of that comes back to. But
Yeah. Um, let's get into the reason that you and I have kind of reconnected. We'll get into board building, but to get
please,
there, yeah, the reason that we reconnected recently was you posted something on Instagram about, and I ended up reading it on a podcast as surf news, but please correct me with this description if I'm wrong, but it basically
sure.
said it was a US customer who had his attorney send you a formal letter complaining about a tariff charge that he received on a board that you shipped from Australia to the US, the customers in the US. He was basically blaming you for the additional tariff charge, seemingly not
Undisclosed
understand.
fees.
Okay, he called it undisclosed fees, but it was, of course, a tariff charge that he seemed to misunderstand US consumers pay, not
Yes.
not
Yeah,
overseas
economics
manufacturers.
101. That's how tariffs work. Sorry, guys.
So,
um,
did you ever first of all, did you ever find resolution with that person? And then
no, no.
additionally, how did this what's transpired since?
Yeah, so there was obviously the tariff thing got a little tricky. I, for people that didn't know, was making boards out in the States for a good 10 years. And then sort of post COVID was back in Australia and sort of wound up that manufacturing out there. And we've just been making stuff at home and sending it. I think we've got a pretty good manufacturing facility here. We've got great materials and great quality and workmanship. So that's always, and it's worked. And also with the exchange rates, it's sort of been
Yeah.
easy enough and worked for everyone to do it that way. Um, but what I always have tried to do is like build boards, where I'm actually selling them, like I've done that going to Europe and doing it. I did it in the UK. I've done it in Hawaii. Sort of actually like, I know it just feels like the most honest way to do it and giving back to the board building community in those places rather than just like building them and shipping them in.
Yeah.
Um, but post COVID, things were a little trickier with travel, and I've sort of had some, I haven't been able to just get out and move as freely myself. I've got, a bit too much going on to be able to just jump on a plane constantly. It's just not logistically possible. Um, but yeah, this tariff thing all kicks in, and I've got some people were cool with it, and they understand how it works. And they had a few people that I got burned on. And that one
Because
board specifically was so bitch, and it was like a really nice, like longboard, double side swirl tint polish thing, just come out looking insane. And the boys worked their ass off on this thing, and then like for some guy to be like, "I'm not paying that," and you're like. So then I get sent the bill from DHL because the guy's refusing to pay it. So I've got to pay it. And I'm like essentially now losing money on this board that you've like worked hard on building. And you're like, fuck, sorry. But yeah, like, come on, man.
does the board
So
get returned?
no, the customer kept it.
So did he pay for the board originally and then just
Paid for the
didn't pay the
board, but
tariff?
then refused to pay for the shipping and the tariff rate.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it
What
just left a bitter taste in your mouth.
what is there a percent is the tariff a percentage of the total value of the board?
It is, but the thing with I think how they've worked is it's been quite erratic where they've changed numerous times. So it's not even like at a time of ordering, like, look, this is sort of what you're up for. They'll jump and change, and it hasn't been like there's a set rate of like it's 20%. Like Europe's got like a VAT tax, like it's pretty specific, a set, what you're dealing with.
Brutal, dude.
So long
Take
story, way too long. I connected again with um Alex Villalobos, who I've worked with for years, and Noah, who's running Moonlight now, and Brian there, and basically kind of reached out to like, let's get some stuff happening back there again. And, I've been working there on and off for 14 or something years, I think now. Um, so reached out back with those guys and connected and getting some production going there again. And obviously I can't be traveling constantly. So we're going to, for the first time, actually have someone else basically sort of scrub them up there for us, working with this guy, Tommy Kroll, who, for anyone who doesn't know, Tommy's sort of working with a few other guys. I asked around and, he got a good rap from some guys I really respect, Alex and Wade Largent and some other crews. So yeah, he's going to be signing all the boards so that we sort of know smoke and mirrors and bullshit. It's like you'll know where they've come from and who's made them, and yeah, be kind of interesting and see how that goes for us to be able to sort of actually properly offer some boards out there in a more efficient manner and hopefully, service the customer base we've had there for a long time, but also offer them to people that haven't been able to get them as easily at a cheaper rate
Yes.
too, and make them all in America and sort of
True.
do it that
True.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to clarify, even though you did explain it, in the past, you would travel to these locations and you would travel to Moonlight specifically. So you said you've been working with them for 12 plus years. It was
Yep.
you showing up to shape the board, a batch
Yep.
essentially while you're there. And then
Yep.
they would laminate and finish the boards for you. So the only
Yeah.
difference with this scenario is you still have the same lamination crew and the finishing crew. It's just Tommy now
Tommy's
shaping
gonna
the
be doing
board
our
rather than you.
pre-shapes for us. Yeah, exactly. So I was just there, spent a couple of weeks working over all the shapes with him and getting them really dialed in, and, yeah, it was a good result, and we're pretty happy with how they're coming out, so
And the
sort of
other
start
difference
with a handful of models and sort of just refine it from there, and, like, I think, we're not gonna try to blast this thing out of the water quickly, we'll just slowly build it and see how it goes.
and the other difference too is that your boards in the US were previously only available in small batches at a limited run, basically, while you were
Yeah,
there to shape. This kind of opens it up so that it'll be available year round, right?
absolutely, yeah. Um,
Cool.
so I think that's good, and kind of trying to stick to like what I was saying about like actually building boards where you're selling them and at least giving back to the supporting surfer labor in that sense of like giving back to the community of board builders rather than like you know taking food off their table because it's definitely getting a little trickier and trickier out there. I think anyone building boards will agree with that, and you've got to be able to support these guys rather than you know make stuff overseas, especially some other factory somewhere in Thailand or whatever, and send them in. It's just like you're just eroding the industry.
Yeah.
It's not good for anyone.
Well, do you have this a similar situation set up anywhere else in the world, or is this your first time using
No, we're just
another
doing it. This
shaper?
is the first sort of foray into it, really. We did over COVID. I had Stu Kenson sort of helping do some stuff just because we had some orders there, and I also had busted my shoulder and couldn't shape. So we did try with Stu for a little while, and that's been good. But Stu's kind of pretty busy with his stuff, and so yeah, so we're just kind of moving in this direction. Hopefully, it all works out and is received well.
For anybody who doesn't know Tommy Kroll, I think he started literally sweeping floors, and he's worked in kind of every level of the factory up until shaping. Um, I think when I met him, he might have been sanding and fin setting, and then I think he was doing lamination after that, and then he's along the way was learning shaping and shaping like his own boards and maybe some boards for his friends. And the point is, he's worked at every level of the factory and he's earned his position here. So I think he's a
Yeah,
fantastic
it's
fit.
and you can definitely tell, like I don't know, without getting grouchy, but seeing people on Instagram putting videos up of them just like, they've just skipped every step and just gone straight to like getting something cut and getting a Gucci glass job on a board. And it's like, you know, they've never actually been in a factory and done the work.
Right.
And, you can tell.
Totally. Yeah. Um, so ultimately, how closely do Tommy's shapes resemble your own?
They're pretty damn tight. We spent a bit of time really just getting like the foils and the cuts we've already got are pretty dialed, and as long as if you can get the cuts done and they're done right, most of the information's there. For me, it's just about I kind of leave a bit of meat on the cuts because I want to get the rail tucks really refined to how I want them. The machines still aren't that accurate all the time. So, it's just about getting the right rail tuck and then sort of the way I'll do my finishing details, noses, tails, and bits and pieces, getting the edges exactly where I want them. So that was, put a couple of weeks in and really got that stuff refined. And then the joy of working with guys that have also worked on your boards for a long time, is the sander knows how you sort of build your stuff and, you know, because you can shape it however you want. If the sander, the gloss coater, there's everyone else along the way can still butcher those things. So
Yeah.
having people that have worked on your boards and know how they're put together really helps.
Um, I think listeners are savvy enough to know, you know, the distinction between hand shapes and machine shapes and then hand finished after that. But they're probably unaware that there are a number of different computer software programs for building the designs. There's a number of different machines that actually cut the blanks. There's a number of different cutting heads and types of blades that can actually do the cuts with different levels of, precision, basically. So, are you using the same machine in Australia that you are in California, or do you have to make adjustments?
We've had to make some adjustments, yeah,
Okay.
and there's different options and, like, different guys have different preferences for what they like too. Um, but yeah, I think the joy of having spent so much time actually traveling and working in different factories around the world is that you have to sort of be able to know how to manipulate and move your programs to make them work to get that consistency. You can't just rely on that that's gonna work everywhere. I specifically know as soon as try to shape a board in America, like the foam is so different to using US blanks is so different to using Burfords here in Australia. Just the cell structure of the foam and the feel is totally different. Like
Say more. What is the difference?
US foam just feels like softer and creamier. It
Okay.
cuts really differently in your hand with your hand tools. Burford's is definitely like a little more of an open structure, but I feel like I don't know, it feels more robust. Um, yeah, I think the Burford foam, in my opinion, it's kind of the best stuff to work with, but it's also just what I'm used to. So American guys might come out here and try to use Burford foam and be like, shit, this like it tears a bit more and it's a little coarser in your hand, but it's the feel I'm used to and it's what I like.
Is
But yeah,
is the feel different in the water once the board's laminated and you're riding it?
I think so. Yeah.
Can you
But
say
that's also
how or why?
it's kind of hard to probably verbalize it. I think the Burford foam it's got a little more pop, but that also could be to do with the timber we use.
Hmm.
I just feel like because it is a little harder, I feel like you can push on it a little more. Just in my experience with my boards in the States, I always feel like, I don't know, they do, I know, it's just like they're a little denser or something. It's like Burfords feel like a little lighter and more airy or something under my feet.
Hmm.
It's not a
Um,
bad thing. It's just like it's a slightly different feel. That's all.
yeah. What stringer you said different timber that you use in Australia. What are you guys using?
I'll just use like a 3/16 ply.
Okay.
Um, and same, I try to use, but it's, all the timber's different, same with, using longboards, we're using different cedars to what you're probably actually getting there. It's the joy of surfboards when it's the magic of it in a way, or also the nightmare of you can get 10 boards made, think they're all going to come out exactly the same. And the cell structure on the foam's going to be a little different. The string is going to be a little different. You know,
Yeah.
it's very impossible to replicate the same thing over and over and think you're going to get the same result.
No, I mean, even the wood grain, even if a stringer was cut from the same, you know, uh, original piece of wood, the wood grain is different on every
Totally.
cut. So there is always going to be variation and flex differences. I'm wondering though if even with something like cedar or like you said plywood, I know
Yeah.
in the US the plywood that US Blanks is using is Italian poplar, so it's I think all the other woods they get are sourced from the US, or not
Yeah.
all of them, but some are sourced from the US, but that plywood is Italian poplar, so I'm wondering, yeah, where Australian you could probably get plywood from anywhere. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's definitely not Italian popular. I could definitely, I could say
okay.
that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like the, we've been like, got some stuff done. Like I've been obviously making boards with those layups and blanks and everything for a long
Yeah.
time and really happy with the construction. I think the longevity we're getting out of stuff works really well. Slightly different feel, but you're going to get that with boards built anywhere.
Absolutely. And, another question I was had for you is, I mean, you're at just the first phase of, bringing on another shaper, and, we've seen kind of, some of the biggest brands where the highest volume surfboard brands anyways, who have an iconic shaper, we see them get to a point where that iconic shaper is in fact shaping a tiny number of boards
Yep.
themselves and maybe not ever even touching a planer. Where are you at on that spectrum? Because ultimately, even though this frees up your time to shape boards at home, you still now are required to do some management. There's going to be more administrative work. There's going to be management work. So, is there a certain quota, a number of boards that you try to shape every week just to kind of stay on top of the craft?
Yeah, yeah, the number I've sort of tried to stick to is here is 20 a week. It's sort of, that's the 1,000 a year sort of give or take.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sounds like a lot of boards. It is,
Yeah.
but it also I've sort of found that's a nice balance of being able to still surf, still sort of, do the things I want to be doing in my life without absolutely, being locked in there because I feel like there's a lot of days where you're doing the admin and answering the emails and dealing with customers and all of that stuff, which is such an important part of the business for us. Like what I want to be doing is building custom boards for people, so having those discussions with the individuals is such an important part of that process that there's some days that I'm in there from, 7 in the morning and it gets to 2 in the afternoon. You haven't actually gotten the shaping bay and you kind of feel like you've not done anything for the day, but
Yeah,
all the other stuff is just as important.
absolutely.
So
What
it's
per,
just about trying to find a number that works and is manageable.
what percentage of are you doing customs versus stock boards?
It's probably 60% custom.
Wow,
Um, yeah.
good
So
for you.
it requires it's still a lot of extra hours in that stuff, and
Yeah.
for better or worse, the hole that I dug with sort of a lot of the resin work that, our crew does, Mark is sort of doing on our boards it's pretty that also becomes labor intensive, for a lot of people coming in and ordering a custom from me, it's, "Oh, okay, I want a 6.6 in this." Well, that's easy, and then they spend the next, 2 hours looking over every color and design and trying to refine it, Sometimes I'm sort of sitting there just going, like, light blue is gonna look really good on that. You don't need to overthink it, but
I was wondering about like your aesthetic is the execution of it is I mean, incredibly beautiful. Um, how much of that is dictated by you or the laminator?
bit of both.
Okay.
I've been working with Mark for 10 years, and he's incredibly good at what he does. Coming up working in sort of shortboard factories, he's got, his dad was a surfboard shaper, so he's kinda grown up around it. Um, he does a really good job of keeping things really nice and light and tight. Um, and then, from working in the States with Alex and Nye, similarly, both guys are just so damn talented. So I'll often, throw stuff of sort of like, "Oh, what about we do this or what about we do that?" And then then there'll be a handful where I'm just like, leave the card blank basically and just be like, "Have at it."
Okay.
Um, so
So you're
allowed us
not
to do some fun stuff.
what's Mark's last name, by the way?
Madhouse Glassco.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah, so
um,
it's damn good.
so the aesthetic that you guys have developed in Australia that I'm familiar with that you're referencing, have you tried to impose that on Moonlight's work at all, or do you let them kind of come up with their own?
I sort of I think when I'm there, I just more leverage the fact that, like, Alex has got his own style and Noah's got his own style. You got Peter in there airbrushing stuff, doing some really bitchin' work. So it's rather than trying to just mimic what we do at home, it's sort of leverage, what those guys' skill sets are because they're some of the best guys in the world at what they do. So
Yeah.
rather than trying to bend that into like what I'm doing in Australia, it's like what we do in Oz is what we're going to do in Oz. And then, if you're ordering a board in the States, well, you've got access to what those guys are capable of doing. I think pretty lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, are the boards identified, labeled differently when they're
Yeah,
manufactured
so
in the
anything that
US?
gets shaped in the States, I'll have Tommy's signature on it. It's not gonna be, we're not doing a stencil sort of with my thing on it. It's just gonna be you'll see very quickly and clearly they'll all have a Moonlight sticker and Tommy's signature on it.
Yep.
So you'll know where they're all coming from and where they're built and who made them.
Very good. Um, you mentioned, or we mentioned, you have had an ongoing relationship with Dave Rostovich, and
Yeah,
we saw during his electric acid surfboard test that he mandated the use of flax as a
yeah.
laminating cloth. What are your thoughts on flax?
I've been using it a fair bit over the last few years. There's some pretty specific sort of layup schedules to use with it. Um, I only really use it on EPS. I find using it on PU, you're just really losing the joy of it. Um, the flex and sort of how well it maintains flex is really the major advantage to it. Um, as far as like the weight you get out of it, I don't really love EPS in general. Um, but with that combined with flax works really nicely. It's sort of, I think there's always the thing that people try to reference when building EPS boards is, oh, it still feels like a really good PU, which for me, mostly, I'm like, why not just make a nice PU board?
Yeah.
um, but the flax stuff does have a really good place in stuff as far as longevity to, the boards hold up really well. Um, they maintain that sort of really nice poppy feel that we like. And it's got a really good kind of compression strength. Sort of, they don't ding up very much at all. And I've been doing a lot of our stuff that goes up to Japan and sort of for softer waves, like East Coast waves in the States. The flax stuff works really well. You can build some really nice light boards for sort of softer, junkier waves. That has a really nice pop and feel and flow to it.
And you're doing those with EPS foam?
EPS, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm wondering how much of that can you attribute to the flax as opposed to epoxy resin or EPS?
The flax definitely has a lot to do with it. I've done just standard EPS epoxy lamination, and I just personally, it's not my flavor.
Yeah.
Um, but the flax really brings that stuff to life.
Okay.
It really adds like a whole other element to it.
Well,
I've tried
the
doing flax with just straight, like, flax just decks. We've tried different things. I've tried doing them string at EPS. I've tried doing just with resin glue lines and sort of tried some different setups. And yeah, like the resin glue line sort of adds like a little extra rigidity to the blank without totally deadening it. Stringed, I feel like the stringed flax stuff gets a little too dead for me. Just because of the sort of compression strength that you get out of the flax. It's not really necessary.
first thing you said about it, the flex pattern and it returning or it maintaining that for a longer period of time. Um, so I think like the return to static, like if something is static and it flexes and then it returns quickly and maintains that return to static over a long period of time, that's beneficial. But the problem that I've run into or seen encountered is that you need a lot of rigidity in order for it to return to static, and rigidity creates stiffness. So
Yeah,
people say flex, but it's like, no, that board's just stiffer. And the reason it's returning to static all the time is because it's so stiff.
yeah.
So are you saying that the flax allows you to
It
flex without feeling
it
too
does. It
rigid?
seems that yeah, that's sort of my general experience with it. Like I've tried doing
Gotcha.
carbon stuff, and I don't like that feel.
Right.
Um, I know some people do, but it's not. I don't love that. I'll do carbon if I'm building like a nice, open ocean paddleboard or something like that. But yeah,
You don't
for
need much
riding it,
flex in that.
no, exactly. You want them to be stiff.
Yeah.
I see some guys riding carbon stuff in these ugly ass wave pools and stuff, and that's fine. But yeah, I think for just your average stuff in the ocean, it's not. You want that like pop and push.
Yeah. So maybe you've already stated it, but what is your preferred construction uh, materials? PU,
PU,
polyester.
yep, yeah. I think just even from a feel, performance, and also environmental standpoint, the amount of stuff I see stamped as eco that is just absolute trash. Where I still just stand by the fact that just building polyester surfboards to the best standard that you can is still almost about the most environmental way to go about things. If you can just build things that last rather than things that have to be replaced often. And that's, for us here in Australia, it's Burford's. I like the US foam out there, and just quality resin, quality glass, built well.
Yeah. Well, when you say some of the stuff that's stamped eco is trash, do you mean just because it breaks down quickly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I seen some boards here the other day that were like not that old that had a big eco surfboard label on them that were browner than, and you're like looking at them, they're all cracked. There's cracks all over the tail. They're just sucking water. And I'm like, and that thing's just like, I'm not sure what part of this is eco when it's been shipped in a container from somewhere. And yeah, maybe you can recycle the foam if someone wants to take a Dremel tool, cut the fiberglass off it, peel it, find a styrofoam recycler. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
too sure what a part of that process is eco or what part of the board is eco.
yeah, nobody's actually recycling any of it.
No.
Um,
All we got to
the
do is
flip
go up the Gold Coast when we've got one of these swells running and just see the broken boards and
yeah. Well, the flip side and the argument for PU is, I mean, you see boards being restored that were built in the 50s,
yeah,
and the reason they're restoring it is because the lamination might be yellowed, or yeah, I guess the foam would be yellowed too, but you see them, they could peel off the lamination, the foam is still intact and just relaminate the boards, and the stringers are
yeah,
still intact too, so it's kinda crazy.
yep, yeah. No, I've got some nice old boards here that are incredible condition, shaped in like the late '60s and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like the way cars are built. It's like look at some old Ford trucks from the early '70s that are still running, and it's like I don't know how many Hyundais that were built in 2002 that are still trucking on.
Dude, that is such a good analogy that I've never thought about, like, steel, cars made out of steel is the equivalent of PU probably.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of I don't know, a lot of junk and kind of myth around all that stuff about it being. I don't know. I don't know if anyone's actually buying it. I think people are smarter than that, surely. This kind of even goes into other thing where I'm like, I'm really curious. I think surfing's in a funny place at the moment where there's more money around surfing, than there probably ever has been. When I'm seeing people wearing, whatever surf club hat around some land development in some landlocked town or place in Mexico, and they're like essentially golf resort communities with a private wave pool going in that billionaires are buying, their fourth house in a gated community, you know, but where's the money that's actually getting fed back into surfing, there's a lot of really great board builders I know that are, struggling to sort of get by, working other jobs or, doing other bits and pieces, moving further away from the coast. You got pro surfers working day jobs trying to get by, and then there's all this other stuff, and it's like, well, where's this benefiting the community in any way?
Well, I I'd be curious to know, don't say it on air, but who those shapers are and what their board prices are, because in my experience, it's old-timer or older dudes who are used to just charging a certain amount for their boards. They're apprehensive to charge more because all their customers are their buddies, and they don't wanna charge more to their buddies.
Yeah,
And they probably bought their house, in the '80s or '90s, and so they're locked in,
absolutely.
they're fine, they don't need to charge more, but ultimately, what they're not realizing is happening is the newer guys who are coming up can't afford to buy the house near the beach, they have to move inland kind of a thing,
Yeah,
and they can't even afford they to not have a second job, because of those economic constraints, because if they charge $1,500 a board and the old timers only charging 900, they look like a dick. So,
100%.
yeah, so I
It
think
is
that's
it is
part of
funny
it.
too because I see, on my end of things, like, what I sort of charge and, what other guys are, I guess, in sort of my space are charging. And, even in my little town here, like in Lennox, there's guys here that I got surfboards off when I was young that are charging probably half of what I'm charging that are probably baffled that I get the price I get,
Right.
And it's not that they don't make good surfboards, it's just they've like is to your point, like they've sort of locked themselves into that. I think there's in every small surf town, there's people that are doing that. It doesn't mean their boards aren't good. It's just sort of they've put themselves into that position in a lot of places.
Well, I've always encouraged them, charge more. I'm like, dude, just
100%.
$25 a year, just keep upping the thing, or $50 a
I
year,
said this
whatever it
to you
is.
last time we had a conversation, but I'm like, I'm great. I'm stoked to see the prices that guys are getting for boards because it's like the insurance that we have to pay just on our factories and to maintain everything and the health safety standards and everything. It's like there's a lot of money that goes out. Like our insurance on our factory is over $100,000 this year. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Well, I think also traditionally, because it has been a cottage industry for decades, um, a lot of things flew under the radar. Like people didn't have insurance, or they didn't have proper disposal, or they didn't need a fire, a sprinkler system in the warehouse, like things that you now need, but might have been grandfathered in previously. And so you didn't necessarily need them. Or the fire inspector just didn't know that you were even operating a surfboard factory, so they flew under the radar. I mean, that stuff has happened traditionally, and so their expenses are lower, but there's no way to grow into a legitimate business, not in 2026, without doing those things and covering those costs.
Yeah, like I said, like for us, it's like it's about $100 a board just in our insurance, just to cover that.
That's crazy.
So it's gnarly.
Yeah.
We've had, there's another factory burnt down in Australia this year, and I think I think the statistic is that the surfboard factories are now rated as a higher fire risk than a fireworks factory.
No way.
So, say what you want about that, but yeah, from an insurance perspective, to try to do things by the book and keep things above board, it's getting expensive. It's hard.
Well, talking about surfer labor previously, have you seen, like, as the prices of the surfboards have increased, are the laminators, sanders, and other roles in the job getting paid more?
At least in my factory, they are.
Okay.
I can't speak to what anyone else is paying guys because I don't really know. But in my factory, we're making sure that's the case. Um, it's just the cost of living. I think everyone knows that things are getting more expensive and gnarlier. So you got to try to. I think surfboards and like if you look at the price of boards in the last 5 years compared to the cost of everything else, like things haven't gone up that much. So you got to try to make sure that the guys can survive and get by. So
Yeah.
I can't speak to what everyone else is paying people.
Fair enough. Um, Kind of moving on from boards, how was that last run of Swell? Was it last week?
Yeah, it was good. I just surfed my little spot here in out the front of my house, basically in Lennox. We had some moments. It was fun. I'm sure everyone's seen the clips of up the Gold Coast, which there was some moments that looked really good. They also seen some clips of a little sort of in between island semi-secret sandbar that apparently is not so secret anymore. There was like 50 jet skis up there, sort of becoming a running meme on the Gold Coast that when the swell's over 3 foot, that everyone's got to fuel up the pony. But it's the waves down in Sydney. I think Sydney's kind of the surprise for a lot of people is people are actually realizing that Sydney's like and the South Coast is like a legit big wave spot. Um, have you seen some of the clips at like some of the spots around Manly and some of the outer reefs there? Like guys were getting some insane waves. Um,
I mean, that's kind of news to me too. I'm embarrassed to admit because I have seen it. I just didn't realize it was happening as frequent as it does.
yeah, yeah. Like I know last year we got some incredible waves, and I've seen some friends, some like Matt Chinosky got a couple of really cool bombs, like 3Ks out to shore. He got some really good waves there last year. Tom Myers got some stuff last year that I think blew everyone away. It's not really my thing, but like there's a couple of guys I know on foils towing some weird outer reef bombies that were just getting some crazy ones. And then, seeing Dylan Longbottom and some of his team towing some crazy slabs and getting some pretty insane waves and pretty sick to see.
It really is. How are the crowds around your spot?
Where I am, it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
We've got Lennox kind of sorts the crowd out pretty well as far as you've got the rocks to navigate getting off, which, can be fun for some people. And then we've got a bit of current, and the banks sort of weren't amazing. So it was a bit sort of mixed up and juggly, but there was still some pretty fun moments. And yeah, it was fun. It was nice. I just landed back from America and then got straight into that for the week. So the
Yeah.
body wasn't feeling as fresh as it could have been, but
What
I got some
is
waves.
um what is the status of your shoulder? And then I don't think we ever discussed the injury, so can you also explain how
My
that happened?
shoulder's good. It's pretty good now. I don't have a lot of range of motion like that. I don't know if you can see, but that's as far as it rotates now.
Okay.
I dislocated it and have had, as a result, I've had 2 shoulder reconstructions, both from trips to Fiji, um, which has been fun. So basically, 2 different trips, 4 or 5 years apart, surfing cloud break, busted my shoulder, um, which was not the most fun I've ever had surfing, solid cloud break with my shoulder out. The first time really sucked and ended up with like a full spiral fracture up there. Um, had surgery on it. Took about it's about a year to 18 months to really get it fully rehabbed and good. And then I decided to go back up to Tavarua, and God knows they keep letting me come. I don't know, thanks to John Roseman for that, but um, went back, and basically there was most of the same crew that were on the island the first time I did it were there, and basically then I popped it again the second time, sort of backside in a tube, and the way your body position is, and fell forward with my arm out. It basically just blew it up over my head. Um,
Just on the surface of the water?
yeah, yeah, sort of like got caught on the foam ball, and as it sort of shot me forward with my arm forward, I guess that body position when you're backside tube riding, and obviously just a bit of a weak spot. And the shoulder's not a great joint. And previously, if you looked at like the bone, this had all been basically the first time had taken a corner off, so it just allowed it to pop out. So now they've actually cut a bit of bone off my hip and screwed it onto the front. So I have like basically a door stop to stop it moving. So
What did that do to
yeah,
your hip?
it's fine.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's sort of what they've done now. So my swimming doesn't look so pretty. My golf swing's atrocious, but at least the shoulder's pretty solid. But
Are you right-handed?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So it's pretty
Oh,
awkward though. It's like you gotta. I gotta try to stay in the gym and stay pretty on it because it it'll get you. My shoulder surgeon probably owes me a few thank yous because I've also sent numerous other surfboard shapers and guys from around our area that have all gone and seen him now. That have all had numerous guys like Ben Mctavish and another guy Ev Squirrel that works around here that have all done their shoulders, and they're like, I'm the guy. They're like, you've done this. Who do I go see?
yeah. What, does it hinder your shaping?
A little bit, just because I just feel like I've lost a bit of like dexterity in my left hand, but I try to use both hands and try to keep things even, just so you're not like twisting your posture and messing your shit up too much. But it
Yeah.
it's definitely doesn't feel as comfortable as it did previously. But it is what it is. It just got to a point where I didn't want to be in a situation again, especially in sort of some heavier surf where you can't swim and you're pinned on a reef. It's not fun.
So does that, prevent you from surfing bigger waves?
I still go back to I went back to Cloudbreak last year for a swell, but I'm definitely a lot more hesitant than I was previously. There's
Yeah,
some,
totally.
some trauma in your brain, and also I'm like, it's like I just can't afford to be taking, 6 months off work or something again anytime soon. So yeah,
Totally.
I haven't.
Um,
Yeah, I wish I had some more confidence and a bit and more skills, but I'm sitting there looking at something, sitting there going, I'm pulling back. I don't need that. I don't want to. I don't want to feel that again.
I think that's part of being a lifelong surfer anyways, is you just learn to manage the risk, mitigate the risk, take fewer chances.
Yeah, it's also probably just getting older, isn't it? It's like we've done enough dumb shit, from whether it was playing football and swimming or whatever else when you were younger. There's probably enough wear and tear on the body that
Totally.
you get older in life and you're just like, I can't keep doing this anymore.
What, you mentioned or described the second wipeout, but what was the first one that did it?
The first one was a really weird one, which I was sort of on the inside, popped up, and there was another wave, and my board was like right beside me, and I just like grabbed it. I was actually on a Arakawa board. I had like a 6'8" that Eric had made me in Hawaii a few years earlier, and popped up, just paddled, took like 2 strokes and went to duck dive, popped through. And as I got through the wave, it very quickly just sort of like you start to feel that thing we've all felt where you like get dragged backwards. And then within a second, like while I'm holding my board, it basically just flipped me upside down and basically holding my board, like rotated it over my head and turned my arms inside out. And sort of all happened before I even had a second to let go of the board, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of that split second thing where maybe you should just like dip under it. But I was like, oh, like, you know, thought I had enough time and just like took 2 strokes and like punched through the face the wave.
Yeah, that also from riding a bigger board, often I've noticed like if I'm used to riding short boards and I get on a slightly larger board, I'm totally not prepared for how the ocean takes that
It'll
little
throw
bit
you
more
around.
mass and whips it
Yeah.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. That
forget
was not pleasant.
not just duck diving, but other things like that where you're just like, whoa, like I don't have control of this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been through it a few more times now where I know what to do with my shoulder out. But I remember that one. It was like some guys from Byron Bay that I knew. One of the guys was like going to nursing school and he was there and I'm like, sung out to him, got myself out into the channel, and he was like trying to he'd only just started nursing school and he was like YouTubing how to put in a dislocated shoulder and just like in the bottom of like not even the Tavi boat, like one of their like little dinghies from the mainland, and he's just like on YouTube out in the middle of the ocean, like trying to do exactly not what you should do, and it was pretty freaking brutal, to be honest.
Did he make it worse?
I probably, yeah.
Brutal, man.
Yeah. Anyway, shoulders are no joke. That's it's pretty rough, especially when you work with your hands for a living.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
so fun.
Well, not only work with your hands, but just carrying a planer and having it kind of out in front of you, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've done it. I think I also popped it. I popped it one time in surfing Encinitas with at Swami's with Devon actually, and then ended up in Scripps Hospital. That was a whole other thing.
Ongoing, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned Eric Arakawa. How often do you ride other Shaper surfboards?
A little bit. I still try to order some boards just sporadically off different guys if there's something they're doing that I find interesting. I went and spent some time. This is probably going back like 10 years, but actually went and spent some time in Hawaii and actually got to work out of Eric's shop for a little bit, which was really cool. You know, and see the way that they were doing stuff. You know, he's just such a class act all round, and the boards he makes, I think, are beautiful. You know, and if you want to see what really nice curves look like in heavy water, I think Eric does about as good a job as anyone you'd ever see. Yeah, I've ordered. I haven't actually got too many boards recently off anyone. I got some Greg Webbers a year or two ago that were pretty trippy, crazy tail rocker and fin positions and stuff. Got a beautiful board off Bob Mctavish a year or two ago. I've got some Stussies, which are really fun. I've got a skip glider and a couple of skip fishes that I get on. It's more just, you know, if rather than me trying to like figure everything out, like you know, if you want to like learn this stuff rather than like you go through all this R&D, it's like there's also a point where you can like shortcut a little bit of that, ride someone else's stuff that does a really good job of that, get the feeling, and sort of then you can kind of like, you know, it's not pulling out the calipers and measuring the thing, but it's like, okay, cool, I know what that feeling is, and then you can sort of then translate it back, I think.
What were the boards like from Weber, and what was there anything from those designs that you were able to kind of utilize in your own?
Honestly, no. I seen a clip of Kelly riding this weird little snub-nosed thing with a little kind of hip midway between the feet, and I was like, "Oh, that thing looks killer." And I don't know why seeing a clip of Kelly riding a board thought that it was going to work for me, but um, that's some hubris. But Yeah, I could not make the thing go. Um,
Okay.
I gave it to a friend and he was just like, loved it. But I think it's just, I'm much more on my front foot and these boards had a crazy amount of tail rocker. And I did actually have one day surfing Iluka, which is this sort of wedgy break wall near my house about an hour south that I did have some moments that went really good, but it just needed that like really pockety, juicy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, there's something I think even in that, for whether you're a shaper or just for anyone, like riding boards that you don't necessarily that aren't what you would usually ride can be a really positive thing where it's either, confirms like, okay, that's what I like and, or opens your door to like, holy shit, there is this whole other thing out there that I should be exploring. Whether, for good
Yeah.
or bad.
Yeah. I mean, certainly with Weber's where the designs are pretty extreme.
The
Um,
volume's, like, always up to 11 with, like, what I think Greg does most of the time.
yeah, but like you said, you write it in a certain scenario and you realize a certain sensation. And it's like, okay, that's the one thing that I can take away from this experience and figure out
Absolutely.
how to apply it.
Yeah. I think there's joy in it, like, to ride for anyone. It's like getting off, like, what you would usually ride and try something totally fresh, you know?
Yeah,
Can either,
completely.
it just breaks that bias of like, "Oh, this is what I'm stuck on," and, whether it's getting, adding a little extra foam or going with something a little wider or a little, or the other way. It's like, actually, maybe I don't need as much foam as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Um, is there any shapers that you're following right now whose work you're particularly interested in or admire?
I honestly haven't really been looking at too much other stuff lately. I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole on a few little weird twists of my own. Um,
What are you working on?
Being kind of just refining what I've already been sort of stuck on. I think I've sort of had these couple of models that I've been really enjoying, being the yin yang and the thang, and then got this other weird little fishy thing I've sort of been playing with. And I'm just sort of trying to then, I guess, just evolve where they're at. Like, I think I've got them in a really lovely place and I've been so stoked on them, but it's sort of, I don't know, I'm going through this little process of like moving a couple of little bits and pieces. And then every now and then it's like, I don't know, it's a funny process because then you realize that maybe actually you didn't need to do all that and it was just fine as it was. But, you know, the curiosity gets the better of me after you do something long enough. You're like, oh, maybe I'll just change that, change this. Um,
I saw on your Instagram some Prome paddle boards. Are you actually paddling yourself?
Been doing a bit of paddling, yeah. Um, I did a bit of that when growing up in Australia. We have like kind of what we call like a surf club scene, surf lifesaving.
Yeah.
Um, and done that. Like I've been over to Molokai and, going up, there's some guys around here. Mctavish is a big guy, like in the paddle scene that I grew up around when I was living on the Gold Coast, when I was sort of just doing school and, knew Jamie Mitchell from Currumbin and those guys. So like that's sort of very much a thing around us around here.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine sort of was big in that scene and we sort of spent a lot of time together. So it's just good, like, summer days here where we don't get as much swell in the summer, just to be out on the water for an hour and, it's pretty damn nice. It's,
Yeah.
it's very simple. And I know some people might think it's kooky, but it's pretty damn nice just to be out on the water for an hour on a beautiful day, just, turning the arms over.
Yeah,
Better than being
absolutely.
in a gym under some fluoro lights, I know that.
Oh, 100%. And it's kind of a full body workout. You think it's just shoulders and arms, but it is a full commitment and has so much applicability for your stand-up surfing experience too.
Oh, it's killer. It's, the only thing that kind of slowed me down with it this summer, I was kind of getting a bit of time in the waters. We just started having so many shark attacks and so much shark activity that was getting pretty sketchy, sort of being out in the ocean, by yourself a little further
Totally.
out. Kind of, I was like starting to get a little apprehensive. I was like, "Well, maybe we don't need to do this right now."
Totally. I don't know. For me, paddling feels a little bit safer because your feet aren't dangling in the water, just sitting like you're
Yeah. And
sitting
like,
flat.
I've been been on a 14-foot board. So I'm sure I'm probably pretty fine, but there is still something, I don't know. There was a lot of shark activity here over the summer. It was definitely a little unnerving at times.
Yeah, that's understandable. Um, I'm always amazed that you have time for anything other than just managing the business. Do you still have time for surf travel?
Yeah, I try to, not as much as I probably would like. I also try to go out, like I go up to Japan for like 3 weeks every year and sort of just lock in up in Niseko and sort of the small little mountains, small towns around there and just snowboard. That's sort of part of the schedule every year. There's also, half the there was 1 week I was there and I was picking Chris Christensen up from the train station with his fiance, and Matt Biolos was there, and I was like with Coco, riding with Coco and her dad, and it's half the surf towns or half the surf communities all there, sort of getting that little feel too. Especially with, I think it was a pretty lackluster year for snow in
Yeah.
North America, so that's always that's nice. The nice thing I think in that too is it's totally removed in a lot of ways from surfing.
Yep.
Nice to just move your head somewhere else. Um,
Completely.
but yeah, I try to get a bit of surf travel in. It's not as much as I probably would like, but I think that's probably everyone, isn't it? Like we'd all like to be on more surf trips.
Um, on a sailboat on a nonstop surf trip.
Wouldn't
Uh,
that be nice? That seems pretty good.
what do you have anything on the docket on the books?
I'm gonna try to get a Fiji trip in the next little while. I've sort of just got to see where I can fit that in, and then later in the year going up to the Mentawais.
Okay.
There's an island up there, Alaya. This couple, Nat and Dave, run that. They do a really beautiful job.
Okay. Sweet.
But yeah,
Good for you,
this
man.
time of year specifically, I try not to. I just try to stay home. This is definitely when we get our best swells, and very fortunate to live in an area that has some of the best waves. I think that you know w- I don't know, if you want to be traveling, it's like the waves we might get in the next few weeks here could be as good or better than anything you'd get anywhere else in the world, even if you were chasing it. So
Being in the ocean is the key. Like you could be riding a mat, you could be prone paddling, whatever it happens to be. Just being in the ocean, I think, is the restoration.
keeps you young, it keeps you healthy. It's got to be the best thing.
Absolutely. Um, Final question for you is who are your picks for bells?
Uh, I'm really curious to see. I think if Gabby's sharp, I think he'll be really tricky to beat. I don't know. I think Jack Robinson and Ethan are probably going to be really sharp. I think they're going to probably be, I don't know. I've got a feeling about Jack this year, but also I think Ethan's just been grinding pretty hard. Um,
What's your feeling about Jack?
I just think there's a little change of equipment there, and I think he just seems really hungry. I think he's in a good mind space.
Okay.
Um, and then on the women's side, I don't know. Like Steph's undoubtedly, I think, still the best female surfer on the planet, in my opinion, anyway. I think if she can show up, I think a lot of the times Steph doesn't. It's not that she gets beaten. I think she loses heats on her own almost sometimes by wave selection or whatever else. I think if she can be on her game, she'll be tricky. Um, Carissa Carissa, and then I know Gabriella Bryant looks very sharp too. So Gabriella Bryant looks really strong right now. So
You
I
know,
think that'll
you know,
sort of be the three.
you know who I think looks stronger than last season significantly is Aaron Brooks.
Yeah,
Like her surfing was always real sparky and sharp, but she gained weight. She somehow grew up in the off season. I saw a clip of her warm ups out there, just in the last day or two, and I was like, she looks like a different surfer almost.
I got to spend 2 weeks in Fiji. She was there last year. I think it was last year. Yeah, and maybe even the year before. I know time's flying. I was like, she was young. She was, yeah, it must have been 2 years ago. I was blown away at like her skills in sort of some heavier surf, and like also just how hungry she was for it. Like she was there with Jarvis Earl and a couple of crew, and she was like getting some pretty gnarly ones at like, you know, good sized cloud break coming off the ledge and paddling back out and just like wanting a bigger one and wanting to get deeper. And I was just like, this kid's legit. She was going hard. I was pretty impressed. So
She's proven it, in her previous performances, but now I think that she's kind of packed on a little bit of mass. I think it'll be a new chapter for her
yeah, it's just that
because
growing up thing, right? Like,
totally, yeah, she started so young.
yeah. Who have you got some cash on if you're a betting man?
Um, I'm gonna keep it fairly general and say a regular footed Australian, I think,
Yeah.
will take it. But I don't feel the same way you feel about Jack Robinson. I love him as a surfer and I love seeing him in consequential surf. He is one of my
Yep.
top, but at waves that are slower or even smaller, I don't feel like he has the same pizzazz as an Ethan.
Yep.
Like Ethan just looks so sparky and faster to me,
Yeah.
and it might just be visually because I don't think I've ever seen either of them like up close in the water. Um, so I'd give it to him. I mean, he's the obvious pick at Bell's.
Yeah. Like that, him on that wave, just, it was so matched.
Yeah, but
And like, have you ever surfed Bells?
no.
It's such a weird wave. Like actually surfing it is so different. Like the timing is really tricky. It like almost feels like it bends away from you. Where you kind of, you'll see guys surfing, it almost looks like they're mistiming things or just missing sections, but it's like
Right.
by the time you come off this, like the slopey basin, it's sort of not super tight, especially if it
Right.
is outside. And it's like by the time you come off the bottom and get to the lip, it's like it's not really there almost when you thought it was going to be.
Well, that one wave that Ethan got last year where he fit 3 waves in or 3 turns in
Yeah,
succession, like, is such a rarity out there. You never see
yeah,
that sequence of turns in that short of a space there.
yeah. I don't know. I'd love to see a goofy footer really tee off out there, like channel some like I don't know. I guess we've seen like Cole Hauschman sort of get some stuff, but like seeing like that, old school Occy Bells skins footage or something like that. Like, I'd love to see someone really get there. And if you get some good winky, or sort of like
Yeah.
inside Bell's ball, I think we could see it. But I don't know. We'll see what the swell forecast does.
Well, the,
You'll say it'll be 10 foot in California for all the
yeah,
people watching this Surfline reads out there.
the, thing you were saying about that upcoming rookie class, they're not all rookies because some of them have been on
Some
tour
of them been
before.
there before.
Yeah, but the thing that you said about them that I noticed too is their ability to come to perform in clutch moments. Like during the CS season and especially that last event, their number of them were in a back against the wall scenario and they get up in riding and they need an 8. And sure enough, every single one of them got the 8. Like
Yeah.
they don't fall, they land the rotation and they don't buckle under the pressure. So I think that is kind of going to bring a new level of, I don't know, tension, intensity to the
Well,
season.
there's got to be something to be said about having that confidence coming into it too, like for anyone that's, watching March Madness right now, or, if you're a baseball fan, it's sort of like coming in with when you're on a heater and got that confidence, and you've like know that like backs against the wall, you can like, manufacture those scores. Like, you know, there's something to be said about that, like being on that run,
Yeah.
and I think that some of those guys have had a bit of a run into this. So yeah, like
Well,
Dane Henry specifically, like I'm like, be curious to see how those guys match up when they kind of get put into it.
I mean, if he can keep his head in the game and perform to his level, he's better than any of them. He looks better than any of
He
them.
looks incredible at the moment, so
Yeah, Dane Henry, I said regular foot Australian because I can point to Dane Henry and say he's been putting in the best performances. But
yeah.
then you look at Liam O'Brien's most recent edit and you're like, fuck.
Oh, it's insane.
Liam O'Brien, that's the best surfing I've seen in a long time. And then
Yeah.
you look over to George Patar and the way that he's surfing, you're like, okay, that's insane too. And then Morgan Siblick's having a band, it's like they're all right there
It's
neck
an
and neck.
exciting time for Australian surfing, I can say that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, I'm excited now to watch Bells, so hopefully it runs the next few
There we
days.
go. Hopefully get some people fired up.
How do people get aboard from you?
Just shoot us an email, hello@deadkooks.com. That's always the easiest. I think in this modern age, everyone loves to just shoot Instagram DMs back and forwards, but I don't know about you, but my inbox gets pretty clogged up with a bunch of junk and I just don't see half of it. It all gets filtered out. So just emails are always the best. And it's kind of an exciting little chapter to sort of change things up for the way we're doing things, and hopefully being able to offer some boards to everyone out there in the States in this way works for people. It kind of makes things more readily available all year round. I think it's a nice way of doing it, being able to sort of support the factories and the guys that have supported me over the years and sort of be able to like, give back to them, and then hopefully, allows everyone else to get some boards out there when they couldn't easily. See
Awesome.
how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the big unlock for anybody who's thinking they can pull off a similar thing, keep in mind the big unlock is talented, hardworking staff who's willing to deliver to your level of excellence, and that's
Yeah.
what's hard to come by.
Yeah. I think we've got a good crew there, everyone in the factory from Tommy to, Jack and the guys doing the finish work and the rub outs. I think we got a good crew, and I'm comfortable with the quality of the work, and I know that we can sort of deliver some really good product. So it's an
Awesome.
exciting sort of little next chapter for us.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, Eden,
Awesome.
good to catch up.
Thanks very much. I'll speak to you
All right,
soon.
man.
Look after yourself.
Okay.
Surf Splendor.